Thank you very much, Mr. Sina Varay, all the way from France. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another installment of the greatest story ever told. It is the Dawnbreakers. That's right. I'm going to do a quick recap as to what happened in the last chapter. Then we're going to roll on and we're going to go further into this. Any comments or questions at any point are more than welcome as we navigate this incredible journey. We're in Isfahan, where previously Muhammad Baghir had been won over to the course of the face, and Mullah Hussein now returns to Isfahan. And there is his son, Haji Sayyid Asadullah. Now, people start to complain and they try and say, what's going on here? Mullah Hussein's back, he's trying to teach. They try and complain to the son, Asadullah. They say to him, please look, can you stop Mullah Hussein teaching his teachings? He returns and says, if my father accepts it, then I'm not going to say anything. And then they say, fine, okay. So then they go to Manusher Khan. Manusher Khan is the governor of Isfahan. And they say to Manusher Khan, please, can you intervene? Can you do something? Mullah Hussein's teaching that the Ghaim is coming. How bizarre is this? Manusher Khan says, this is not a mission for me. This is for the ecclesiastics to understand. So then he says to them, look, stop stirring, just leave it. These people are not happy, but that's all we hear from that. Then we hear this beautiful story of the sifter of wheat. The sifter of wheat was someone who found out about the faith, became instantly enamored. And even when later on, there's the Battle of Fort Sheikh Tabasi up here, he heads up there. He's one of the heroic defenders of the fort and is indeed martyred. So amazing is this guy that he is mentioned in both the Kitab Bayan and the Kitab Aqda. So the Babi's mother book and the Baha'i's mother book. After this, we hear in Isfahan also that some of the believers that were there was Mirza Muhammad Ali Nuhri. Now, he was going to become Abdul Baha's father-in-law. Also, his brother was there as well, Mirza Haidi. So these two guys, they become Babis at around that point. We know that Mullah Sadegh, if you remember Mullah Sadegh, who was given the mission once the Bab had returned back from pilgrimage, Qudus goes and meets the Bab's uncle and Mullah Sadegh. Mullah Sadegh stands up in the mosque and teaches and is beaten severely. He is now in Isfahan and had been waiting there for 5 years in Isfahan. So Mullah Sadegh then meets Mullah Hussein. They now meet in Isfahan in Abdul Baha's father-in-law's house, in Mirza Muhammad Ali al-Nahri's house. And it's there he says, please, Mullah Hussein, tell me, who is this promised one? You clearly know who it is, because Sadegh didn't know exactly who it was. And Mullah Hussein says to him, look, the leaders of the living had to figure it out themselves. I'm sure you can figure this out. Really, if you're true in your desire to figure it out, you'll figure it out. So we ask to go and pray. He says, okay, look, Mullah Sadegh says, all right, fine, to Mullah Ali al-Nahri, Abdul Baha's father-in-law, can you please just let me have some time to pray? He goes, he prays, and he has this beautiful vision, this dream that he has, where he's at the shrine of Imam Hussein in Karbala. All of a sudden, he sees this youth that he had previously seen there, who was none other than the Bab. As he gets close to him, he falls to his feet, the youth suddenly vanishes. He then goes to Mullah Hussein, shares the story, and Mullah Hussein says, okay, you may be right, but please do not say anything. Bear in mind, if he says anything, people are going to be killed. He then says to Mullah Sadegh, I want you to go to Kerman to teach Mirza Karim Khan, who was someone who we know turned against the Babi and ended up being the leader of the Shaykhis. So he's meant to go to Kerman. After this, Mullah Hussein travels up to Kashan. When he goes to Kashan, the first person to believe was Haji Mirza Jania Kashani, surnamed Parpar, who was my great-great-granddad. Remember, the very handsome man indeed. From Kashan, he then goes on to Gom. No one in Gom really actually became a follower. The seed was set, and then a little bit later, Haji Mirza Mursi, in the time of Baha'u'llah in Baghdad, then becomes a Baha'i. From Gom, he then heads up to Tehran. When he's in Tehran, Haji Mirza Muhammad Khorasani is the teacher of the school, the Pay Minar school. And Mullah Hussein goes to teach him, and he goes to teach this Haji Mirza Muhammad Khorasani, and he's not interested. Eventually, he leaves, and the guy says to him, look, we had hoped you would support the Shaykhis. He says, what's this nonsense about the Ghaim coming? You should be supporting the Shaykhis, otherwise the Shaykhis would evaporate. There'd be no reason for the Shaykhis anymore. And this is a classic example of someone being attached to the lamp instead of the light within. So he was so attached to being a Shaykhi still, not realizing that this is what Shaykh Ahmad had taught, that the coming was going to be there. We then hear Mirza Musa, Baha'u'llah's brother, who tells Nabil of this story of Mullah Mullah Muhammad Mu'allim. Mullah Muhammad Mu'allim was a disciple of Haji Mirza Muhammad al-Khorasani, so the guy in this school. He was his disciple. He hears this conversation. He then has a conversation with Mullah Hussain. Lo and behold, he believes in what Mullah Hussain says. Mullah Hussain then, interestingly enough, says, okay, where are you from? He says, I'm from Noor. He says, you're from Noor. Do you know Mirza Buzurg Noori? He says, yes, of course I do. He says, are any of his children as illustrious as his father? And he says, well, yes, actually, there's one person. And he then starts asking him a bunch of questions about, how old he is. And he says, well, he's 28. What does he do for his work? And he cheers the disconsolate. And what script is the best? And he's the best of the Shikaster Nastali script. And then Mullah says, okay, enough. He gives him a scroll that is wrapped around with a cloth and says, go and give this to him, please. Mu'allim goes to the house. It's opened by Mirza Musa. He gives the scroll. Baha'u'llah reads the scroll, is absolutely blown away, and is on board. Russian sugar and tea is given to Mullah Mu'allim to be given back to Mullah Hussain. He then goes and gives it to Mullah Hussain. Mullah Hussain is blown away, kisses both his eyes, and Mullah Mu'allim is a little bit confused as to what's happened. And Mullah Hussain says, don't tell anyone that this has happened. And Mullah Mu'allim's thinking, I won't. I don't understand what's really happened, but okay, cool, fine, whatever works. Mullah Hussain then informs the Bab of what's happened, and the Bab is ecstatic, knowing that things are in hand. After this, ladies and gentlemen, we then hear a little bit about Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah going to Taqur, to his dad's house. Just here, this is Taqur. Taqur, not too far away from Noor. He goes there, we hear about the qualities of Baha'u'llah's father. We hear about this big flood that's taking place, which damages half the house. Mirza Ahmad Taghi Noori is a mujtahid that Baha'u'llah had met previously. And Baha'u'llah, when he'd met him, he was walking along, and Mirza Muhammad Taghi Noori, this mujtahid, he was having a class, talking to all his disciples. He asked a question. Nobody can answer, apart from Baha'u'llah. And this guy is so annoyed at his disciples, he says, how come Baha'u'llah can answer? He's not even a cleric guy. What is this? We then learn about two of the dreams that Mirza Muhammad Taghi Noori has. One of them is where he sees everyone crowding and pointing to a house, the house of the 12th Imam, the Ghaim. And the Ghaim is inside, and he's talking to someone. He gets closer, but he can't enter. He finds out the Ghaim is talking to Baha'u'llah. He has another dream where he sees a bunch of coffers, these boxes. He goes and he opens them up, and inside there are these scrolls with these words of Baha'u'llah written in the most majestic gems. So he has these two dreams. Baha'u'llah then returns back to this area in 1844. Unfortunately, Mullah Muhammad Taghi Noori has passed away. His son, Mullah Muhammad, is there. Mullah Muhammad says, oh, Baha'u'llah, hello, how are you doing? Obviously, he's not known as Baha'u'llah then. Tell us about the latest news that's come from the court of the Shah. Please inform us of what's been happening. Baha'u'llah is just not so much engaging with this, and they're all a bit confused. They're like, but there's loads of gossip. Tell us, what's the prince wearing? Like, is there a new dog? Is there a new corgi? What's going on? Baha'u'llah's not interested in this. Baha'u'llah shares the message of the coming of the Ghaib. Most people are kind of okay with this, apart from the first person, Aziz, who's the uncle of Baha'u'llah, who gets really annoyed and starts to complain. He then, Mullah Muhammad Noori, writes to him and says, the Babis, these people, they're putting things in their tea. What's going on? And then there's a conversation back and forth in which Mullah Muhammad says, look, beware lest anyone molest you, although there's some grammatical error with this, and it sounds like he's saying he wants to molest Mullah Muhammad. People laugh at both of them. It's kind of a bit of a breakdown in what's going on. Then the disciples of Mullah Muhammad, remember, being the son of Taghi, who had previously had these dreams about Baha'u'llah, he is then being told by his disciples, why don't you go and investigate the claims? Surely this is your duty. You should investigate the claims. And he's like, I don't need to, And they keep pushing him. And eventually he says, okay, I'm going to send two people who are actually the son-in-laws of Taghi, the father. And he says, they are going to go down and investigate. And if they believe, khalas, I will believe as well, no problem. So he sends Mullah Abbas and he says Mirza Abu Qasim to go down and investigate. They find Baha'u'llah talking about a verse of the Quran, these 7 verses of repetition, and he is blown away. Mullah Abbas is absolutely blown away and freezes and says to Mirza Abu Qasim, I don't know what you want to do, but I'm staying here. I'm not coming back. I found my king. Mirza Abu Qasim says exactly the same thing, and both of them become followers. Unfortunately, Mullah Muhammad, who had promised the Mujtahid of Noor that he would also follow, doesn't follow. Baha'u'llah is basically told, and they say, look, Mullah Muhammad isn't following you. Baha'u'llah says, fine, I will go to Noor and I will speak to him myself. Baha'u'llah goes there and says, I've come to share with you this message. The Ghaim is here and things are changing. Mullah Muhammad gets so scared. He says, right, here's what I'll do. I'll grab a copy of my Quran and I'll flick through it and I'll stop, and wherever I stop, that will give me the answer as to whether or not I should engage with you. He does this, flicks through and just says, nope, the Quran says, nope, sorry, I'm not going to engage with you. As a result, Baha'u'llah can see that he doesn't want to investigate this, and Baha'u'llah, to save him any further embarrassment, gets up and leaves. We then have the story of the Dervish, of Mullah Mustafa. He's the guy who's eating and cooking God, and he's setting God on fire. Baha'u'llah finds him very entertaining. He then follows Baha'u'llah and walks alongside Baha'u'llah, and he comes up with this song that's sung by Sufis today. His name was Mullah Mustafa. And this song, some people attribute to him, others don't, but apparently the song started from there. That brings us up to date with what's been going on. We had 2 chapters that we were covering there, so there was a fair bit of information to get in, but hopefully you know that, and it was just a recap.
Baha'u'llah's visit to Nur had produced the most far-reaching results and had lent a remarkable impetus to the spread of the newborn revelation. By his magnetic eloquence, by the purity of his life, by the dignity of his bearing, by the unanswerable logic of his argument, and by the many evidences of his loving kindness, Baha'u'llah had won the hearts of the people of Nur, had stirred their souls, and had enrolled them under the standard of the faith. Such was the effect of words and deeds, as he went about preaching the cause and revealing its glory to his countrymen in Nur, that the very stones and trees of that district seemed to have quickened by the waves of spiritual power which emanated from his person. All things seemed to be endowed with a new and more abundant life. All things seemed to be proclaiming aloud, "Behold, the beauty of God has been made manifest. Arise, for he has come in all his glory." The people of Nur, when Baha'u'llah had departed from out their midst, continued to propagate the cause and to consolidate its foundations. A number of them endured the severest afflictions for his sake. Others quaffed with gladness the cup of martyrdom in his path. Mazindaran in general, and Nur in particular, were thus distinguished from the other provinces and districts of Persia as being the first to have eagerly embraced the divine message. The district of Nur, literally meaning light, which lay embedded within the mountains of Mazindaran, was the first to catch the rays of the sun that had arisen in Shiraz, the first to proclaim to the rest of Persia, which still lay enveloped in the shadow of the veil of heedlessness, that the day star of heavenly guidance had at length arisen to warm and illuminate the whole land. When Baha'u'llah was still a child, the vizier, his father, dreamed a dream. Baha'u'llah appeared to him swimming in a vast, limitless ocean. His body shone upon the waters with a radiance that illumined the sea. Around his head, which could distinctly be seen above the waters, there radiated in all directions his long jet-black locks, floating in great profusion above the waves. As he dreamed, a multitude of fishes gathered round him, each holding fast to the extremity of one hair. Fascinated by the effulgence of his face, they followed him in whatever direction he swam. Great as was their number, and however firmly they clung to his locks, not one single hair seemed to have been detached from his head, nor did the least injury affect his person. Free and unrestrained, he moved above the waters, and they all followed him. The vizier, greatly impressed by this dream, summoned a soothsayer who had achieved fame in that region and asked him to interpret it for him. This man, as if inspired by a premonition of the future glory of Baha'u'llah, declared, "The limitless ocean that you have seen in your dream, O vizier, is none other than the world of being. Single-handed and alone, your son will achieve supreme ascendancy over it. Wherever he may please, he will proceed unhindered. No one will resist his march. No one will hinder his progress. The multitude of fishes signifies the turmoil which he will arouse amidst the peoples and kindreds of the earth. Around him will they gather, and to him will they cling. Assured of the unfailing protection of the Almighty, this tumult will never harm his person, nor will his loneliness upon the sea of life endanger his safety." That soothsayer was subsequently taken to see Baha'u'llah. He looked intently upon his face and examined carefully his features. He was charmed by his appearance and extolled every trait of his countenance. Every expression in that face revealed to his eye a sign of his concealed glory. So great was his admiration, and so profuse his praise of Baha'u'llah, that the vizier from that day became even more passionately devoted to his son. The words spoken by the soothsayer served to fortify his hopes and confidence in him. Like Jacob, he had desired only to ensure the welfare of his beloved Joseph and to surround him with his loving protection. Haji Mirza Agassi, the Grand Vizier of Muhammad Shah, though completely alienated from Baha'u'llah's father, showed his son every mark of consideration and favor. So great was the esteem which the Haji professed for him that Mirza Aga Khan Nuri, who afterwards succeeded Haji Mirza Agassi, felt envious. He resented the superiority which Baha'u'llah, as a mere youth, was accorded over him. The seeds of jealousy were from that time implanted in his breast. Though still a youth, and while his father is yet alive, he thought, he is given precedence in the presence of the Grand Vizier. What will, I wonder, happen to me when this young man shall have succeeded his father? After the death of the Vizier, Haji Mirza Agassi continued to show the utmost consideration to Baha'u'llah. He would visit him in his home and would address him as though he were his own son. The sincerity of his devotion, however, was very soon put to the test. One day, as he was passing through the village of Couch Hizar, which belonged to Baha'u'llah, he was so impressed by the charm and beauty of that place and abundance of water that he conceived the idea of becoming its owner. Baha'u'llah, whom he had summoned to effect the immediate purchase of that village, observed, "Had this property been exclusively mine own, I would willingly have complied with your desire. This transitory life, with all its sordid possessions, is worthy of no attachment in my eyes. How much less this small and insignificant estate? As a number of other people, both rich and poor, some of full age and some still minors, share with me the ownership of this property, I would request you to refer this matter to them and to seek their consent." Unsatisfied with this reply, Haji Mirza Agassi sought through fraudulent means to achieve his purpose. So soon as Baha'u'llah was informed of his evil designs, he, with the consent of all concerned, immediately transferred the title of the property to the name of the sister of Muhammad Shah, who had already repeatedly expressed her desire to become its owner. The Haji, furious at this transaction, ordered that the estate should be forcibly seized, claiming that he already had purchased it from its original possessor. The representatives of Haji Mirza Agassi were severely rebuked by the agents of the sister of the Shah and were requested to inform their master of the determination of that lady to assert her rights. The Haji referred the case to Muhammad Shah and complained of the unjust treatment to which he had been subjected. That very night, the Shah's sister had acquainted him with the nature of the transaction. "Many a time," she said to her brother, "Your Imperial Majesty has graciously signified your desire that I should dispose of the jewels with which I am wont to adorn myself in your presence, and with the proceeds purchase some property. I have at last succeeded in fulfilling your desire. Haji Mirza Agassi, however, is now fully determined to seize it forcibly from me." The Shah reassured his sister and commanded the Haji to forego his claim. The latter, in his despair, summoned Baha'u'llah to his presence and, by every artifice, strove to discredit his name. To the charges he brought against him, Baha'u'llah vigorously replied and succeeded in establishing his innocence. In his impotent rage, the Grand Vizier exclaimed, "What is the purpose of all this feasting and banqueting in which you seem to delight? I, who am the Prime Minister of Shahin Shah of Persia, never receive the number and variety of guests that crowd around your table every night. Why all this extravagance and vanity? You surely must be meditating a plot against me." "Gracious God," Baha'u'llah replied, "is the man who, out of the abundance of his heart, shares his bread with his fellow men to be accused of harboring criminal intentions? Haji Mirza Aghassi was utterly confounded. He dared no reply. Though supported by the combined ecclesiastical and civil powers of Persia, he eventually found himself, in every contest he ventured against Baha'u'llah, completely defeated.
This all takes place in Mazandaran, primarily in the area of Takora, where Baha'u'llah's ancestral home was. We know that Haji Mirza Aghassi, the prime minister, very much respected Baha'u'llah. Even when Baha'u'llah's father died, he would go and visit him. However, this very much upsets Mirza Aga Khan Nuri, who's eventually going to be the prime minister down the line, saying, how come he's affording him so much respect when I'm still alive? Haji Mirza Aghassi then wants to buy this property in Kuch Hizar. He says to Baha'u'llah, please, will you buy this for me? Baha'u'llah says, look, you have to obtain the consent of the people who live there. Haji Mirza Aghassi decides he's just going to buy it himself, and that's that. Baha'u'llah then intervenes and has the property sold to the sister of the Shah. This enrages Haji Mirza Aghassi, who then goes to the Shah. The sister of the Shah had spoken to the Shah previously and said, had you not wanted me to sell all of my jewelry that I adorn myself and buy property? Well, this is what I've done. The Shah then accepts that the property belongs to the sister. The Prime Minister was unable to buy the property. But because of this, he was furious with His Holiness Baha'u'llah. He actually sees Baha'u'llah one day, and Baha'u'llah's giving this banquet where he's feeding everyone and showing love and generosity. And then he accuses Baha'u'llah and says, look, you have a big banquet. I'm so important. Yet you have a big banquet. You think you're more important than me? And Baha'u'llah says, no, I'm feeding people. I'm trying to help people. And this was the only attack that he had against him. We hear that Nur and Mazandaran, this whole province that's above Tehran, was the first place to really be on fire with the love of the Bab and the love of Baha'u'llah. In the whole of Iran, this is the one place that the whole thing kicks off. We then hear about the dream of Baha'u'llah's father. Baha'u'llah's father has this dream where he sees his son swimming in an ocean with his hair all out. All these fish are attached to the ends of his hair. And then when he sees the soothsayer to explain the dream, the soothsayer says, yes, these fish at the end are all the turmoil of the world, but nothing can harm it. The soothsayer came and saw Baha'u'llah and fell in love with Baha'u'llah's character and his charm and the rest of it. And the vizier, his father, loved him even more.
On a number of other occasions, Baha'u'llah's ascendancy over his opponents was likewise vindicated and recognized. These personal triumphs achieved by him served to enhance his position and spread abroad his fame. All classes of men marveled at his miraculous success in emerging unscathed from the most perilous encounters. Nothing short of divine protection, they thought, could have ensured his safety on such occasions. Not once did Baha'u'llah, beset though he was by the gravest perils, submit to the arrogance, the greed, and the treachery of those around him. In his constant association during those days with the highest dignitaries of the realm, whether ecclesiastical or state officials, he was never content simply to accede to the views they expressed or the claims they advanced. He would, at their gatherings, fearlessly champion the cause of truth, would assert the rights of the downtrodden, defending the weak and protecting the innocent.
As expected, Baha'u'llah just defending everyone around him, protecting them. We're now going to move on to the chapter of Mullah Hussein's journey to Khorasan. Mullah Hussein was told by the Bab to go from Shiraz to Isfahan to Kashan to Qom to Tehran, and from there to proceed to go to Khorasan. Mashhad is the capital of Khorasan. The province Khorasan is this area up here. From there, he will be heading over towards Najaf. So this is about Mullah Hussein's journey now to Khorasan. We're joining Mullah Hussein again.
As the Bab bade farewell to the letters of the living, he instructed them each and all to record separately the name of every believer who embraced the faith and identified himself with its teachings. The list of these believers he bade them enclosed in sealed letters and addressed them to his maternal uncle, Haji Mirza Sayyid Ali in Shiraz, who would in turn deliver them to him. I shall classify these lists, he told them, into 18 sets of 19 names each. Each set will constitute one Vahed. All these names in these 18 sets will, together with the first Vahed, consisting of my own name and those of the 18 letters of the living, constitute the number of Kulishay. Of all these believers I shall make mention in the tablet of God, so that upon each one of them the beloved of our hearts may, in the day when he shall have ascended the throne of glory, confer his inestimable blessings and declare them the dwellers of his paradise. To Mullah Hussein more particularly, The Bab gave definite injunctions to send him a written report on the nature and progress of his activities in Isfahan, in Tehran, and in Khorasan. He urged him to inform him of those who accepted and submitted to the faith, as well as those who rejected and repudiated its truth. Not until I receive your letter from Khorasan, he said, shall I be ready to set out from this city on my pilgrimage to Hijaz. Mullah Hussein, refreshed and fortified by the experience of his intercourse with Baha'u'llah, set out on his journey to Khorasan. During his visit to that province, he exhibited in an astonishing manner the effects of that regenerating power with which the parting words of the Bab had invested him. The first to embrace the faith in Khorasan was Mirza Ahmad Asqandi, the most learned, the wisest, and the most eminent among the ulamas of that province. In whatever gathering he appeared, no matter how great the number or representative the character of the divines who were present, he alone was invariably the chief speaker. The high traits of his character, as well as his extreme devoutness, had ennobled the reputation which he had already acquired through his erudition, his ability, and wisdom. The next to embrace the faith among the shaykhis of Khorasan was Mullah Ahmad Mu'allem, who while in Karbala had been the instructor of the children of Sayyid Kazem. Next to him came Mullah Sheikh Ali, who the Bab surnamed Azim, and then Mullah Mirza Muhammad Furuqi, whose learning was unsurpassed except by that of Mirza Ahmad. No one, apart from these outstanding figures among the ecclesiastical leaders of Khorasan, exercised sufficient authority or possessed the necessary knowledge to challenge the arguments of Mullah Hussein. Mirza Muhammad Baqir Qaini, who for the remaining years of his life had established his residence in Mashhad, was the next to embrace the message. The love of the Bab inflamed his soul with such a consuming passion that no one could resist its force or could belittle its influence. His fearlessness, his unsparing energy, his unswerving loyalty, and the integrity of his life all combined to make him the terror of his enemies and a source of inspiration to his friends. He placed his home at the disposal of Mullah Hussein, arranged for separate interviews between him and the ulamas of Mashhad, and continued to endeavor to the utmost of his power to remove every obstacle that might impede the progress of the faith. He was untiring in his efforts, undeviating in his purpose, and inexhaustible in his energy. He continued to labor indefatigably for his beloved cause until the last hour of his life, when he fell a martyr at the fort of Sheikh Tabarsi. In his last days, he was bidden by Qudus, after the tragic death of Mullah Hussein, to assume the leadership of the heroic defenders of that fort. He acquitted himself gloriously of his task. His home, situated in Bala Khiyaban, in the city of Mashhad, is up to the present time known by the name of Babiyeh. Whoever enters it can never escape the accusation of being a Babi. May his soul rest in peace. Mullah Hussein, as soon as he had won to the cause such able and devoted supporters, decided to address a written report concerning his activities to the Bab. In his communication, he referred at length to his sojourn in Isfahan and Kashan, described the account of his experience with Baha'u'llah, referred to the departure of the latter for Mazindaran, related the events of Nur, and informed him of the success which had attended his own efforts in Khorasan. In it, he enclosed a list of the names who have responded to his call, and of whose steadfastness and sincerity he was assured. He sent his letter by way of Yazd through the trustworthy partners of the Bab's maternal uncle, who were at that time residing in Tabas. That letter reached the Bab on the night preceding the 27th day of Ramadan, a night held in great reverence by all the sects of Islam, and regarded by many as rivaling the sacredness of the Laylatul Qadr itself, the night which in the words of the Quran excelleth 1,000 months. The only companion of the Bab when that letter reached him that night was Qudus, with whom he shared a number of its passages. I have heard Mirza Ahmad relate the following. The Bab's maternal uncle himself described to me the circumstances attending the receipt of Mullah Hussein's letter by the Bab. That night, I saw such evidences of joy and gladness on the faces of the Bab and of Qudus as I am unable to describe. I often heard the Bab in those days exultingly repeat the words, How marvelous, how exceedingly marvelous is that which hath occurred between the months of Jamadi and Rajab. As he was reading the communication addressed to him by Mullah Hussein, he turned to Qudus, and showing him certain passages of that letter, explained the reason for his joyous expressions of surprise. I, for my part, remained completely unaware of the nature of that explanation. Mirza Ahmad, upon whom the account of this incident had produced a profound impression, was determined to fathom its mystery. Not until I met Mullah Hussein in Shiraz, he told me, was I able to satisfy my curiosity. When I repeated to him the account described to me by the Bab's uncle, he smiled and said how well he remembered that between the months of Jamadi and Rajab, he chanced to be in Tehran. He gave no further explanation and contented himself with this brief remark. This was sufficient, however, to convince me that in the city of Tehran there lay hidden a mystery which, when revealed to the world, would bring unspeakable joy to the hearts of both the Bab and Qudus. The references in Mullah Hussein's letter to Baha'u'llah's immediate response to the divine message, to the vigorous campaign which he had boldly initiated in Nur, and to the marvelous success which had attended his efforts, cheered and gladdened the Bab, and reinforced his confidence in the ultimate victory of his cause. He felt assured that if now he were to fall suddenly a victim to the tyranny of his foes and depart from this world, the cause which he had revealed would live, would, under the direction of Baha'u'llah, continue to develop and flourish, and would yield eventually its choicest fruit. The master hand of Baha'u'llah would steer its course, and the pervading influence of his love would establish it in the hearts of men. Such a conviction fortified his spirit and filled him with hope. From that moment, his fears of the imminence of peril or danger entirely forsook him. Phoenix-like, he welcomed with joy the fire of adversity and gloried in the glow and heat of its flame.
The Bab mentions that he needs 18 more sets of heads, and this is 18 sets of 19 people, to go with the first set, the Bab and the Letters of the Living, to make the Kula Shay. This is when he can go on pilgrimage. To Mullah Hussein, specifically, he asks him to send a letter from Khorasan, this province here. While Mullah Hussein's in Khorasan, we know the first to believe in him is Mirza Ahmad Azghandi, who was the most eminent ulama of Khorasan. The second was Mullah Ahmad Mu'allim, who was the instructor of Sayyid Kazim's kids in Karbala. The third person was Mullah Mirza Muhammad Furughi, who was second only to Mirza Ahmad. The fourth one was Mullah Sheikh Ali, who the Bab surnamed Azim. The fifth person in Khorasan to believe was none other than Mirza Muhammad Bargir Gaini. Now, this guy was incredible. He'd have many firesides at his house, he'd have many meetings between ulamas and Mullah Hussein. He also, after Mullah Hussein had passed away, was asked to take the leadership of the forts in the Battle of Fort Sheikh Tabasi. His house in Mashhad was known as Babiyeh. Anyone who went into that house was certain to be a Babi. Mullah Hussein sends his letter from Khorasan to the Bab. It goes via way of Yazd, where the Bab's uncle was, and then we know that this night that they receive this letter is a night that rivals the Laylatul Qadr itself. The Laylatul Qadr being this very important thing in Islam, where they say it's a night it's more important than 1,000 months. Now, of course, 1,000 months would contain this night, Laylatul Qadr, inside it, but it's this mystical, magical event that takes place. It's during the month of Muharram, and this actually rivals that, such as the greatness of the day they get this letter. Then they're heard to comment and say how marvelous is what happens between the months of Jamadi and Rajab. So the Bab is talking with Qudus. They're having this conversation, and he says, this is incredible what's happened between the months of Jamadi and Rajab, and they get so exciting. Now Mirza Ahmad, who's there, hears this, and he's very confused about what was so exciting. You know, the way Qudus reacts, the way the Bab reacts. Later on, Mirza Ahmad meets Mullah Hussein and asks him what happened during those months. Mullah Hussein remembers that between the months of Jamadi and Rajab, he was indeed up in Tehran. This is when he gave the scroll to Mullah Mu'allim to give to Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah then accepts the faith during these months. The Bab, upon receipt of this, is assured of ultimate victory. The Bab also, after finding out that 361 people had declared, now he's ready and set to go on his pilgrimage. Which takes us on to the next chapter, the Bab's pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina. Do we have any comments or questions?
One question, Dave. In the beginning of the preceding chapter, the Bab is talking about a list of believers, and he mentions the number of kulli shay. Could you elaborate on the meaning of that?
Kula shay, absolutely. If you just bear with me 1 second. So Kula shay. Firstly, so we read the words as Ryan was reading Vahed. This word Vahed. Vahed is a word that means unity, and I keep talking about the abjad numbers that exist. That something has an abjad value. So this is the. If we look at this here, this is what the abjad system is, where each letter has a value. So, for example, A is 1, B 2, J 3, so on and so forth. So we have Vahed here. It has a total of 19. When you add all the value of the letters up, you see this comes to 19. Now, 19 means the word one. It means unity. The Bab has decided that actually what he needs is 361 souls that should accept the faith of the Bab. So we know that when you have the Bab, which is 1, plus the 18 letters of the living, that makes the first Vahed. So a lot of this is symbolic, but he says he wants 19 sets of 19 Vaheds is what he wants before he goes on pilgrimage, which is this number 361, which corresponds to this word here, Kula Shay. And Kula Shay has an abjad value of 361. So it's very symbolic because this symbolizes all things and everything, and he wants to be very inclusive of everything. So that's where Kula Shay comes from, with this value 361.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you very much for your question, Nick.
One very small point, dearest Dave, one small point. You know that excitement, that major excitement of His Holiness the Bab and Quddus, and they were saying like a song, Al-Ajab, Kull al-Ajab, Bain al-Jumadi wal-Rajab, Al-Ajab, Summa al-Ajab, Bain al-Jamadi wal-Rajab, marvelous, how exceedingly marvelous, marvelous, how exceedingly marvelous, what between Rajab and Jamadi. Now, they were chanting this and probably dancing in a joy in the house of the Bab. Now, I did a little bit of exploration on this. It's an offering. In that book, Behar, that massive book, 3 volumes, which has all the prophecies about the promised one, some of them literal, of course, some of them metaphorical. Behar, the one that is mentioned in detail in the Book of Certitude, many, many times, and in all the references of the Bab and Baha'u'llah, nearly 100 times, Behar, that ocean of prophecy. In that book, dearest Dave, it says that the Imam Ali was told by the Prophet Muhammad, Al-Ajab, Summa al-Ajab, Bain al-Jumadi wal-Rajab, how marvelous, how exceedingly marvelous the events between Jumadi, which is the 22nd of May, Jumadi al-Awwal. After Jumadi al-Awwal, you have Jumadi al-Thani, then you have another month, and then you have Rajab. So it's a distance of about 4 months, 3 to 4 months. So the point is, Dave, that utterance, that couplet in Arabic, that joy was anticipated in the book of Behar al-Anwar. Is extraordinary, because none of the commentators in that book for 1,200 years have actually made sense. Why would the Prophet say something marvelous has happened between this month and another month? And of course, there's been 1,400 such events every year since the beginning of Islam. And nothing particularly, it's not Ramadan, it's not Muharram, it's not Ashura, it's just 1 month and another month. Why would the Prophet of God and Imam Ali, the first Imam, be so excited about that interval? And it seems, dearest Dave, to me, my humble mind, that prophecy of Behar refers to this event of Baha'u'llah's accepting, supporting, corroborating, strengthening the cause of the Bab and Quddus.
Dr. Fanan Apazir, again, blowing our minds, absolutely, like a bazooka to the head. We are so fortunate to have the scholar Khaza Fanan Apazir here with us. He's someone who I've asked very kindly if he'd join in with the sessions and fill things that there's just so much to this. So thank you so much, dear Khaza. Yeah, this book of Bihar that he mentions has many of the traditions that come from the 6th Imam of Shia Islam and his father from Sadiq Jafar and Bagher. So yeah, absolutely amazing. And maybe we'll have a discussion with Dr. Fanan Apazir at some point, looking at some of these prophecies that come from Islam. It's mind-blowing, the things that have been fulfilled. But thank you so much, Dr. Khaza, for that.
Dave, what does this first sentence mean? I started reading it before, and I can't make heads and tails out of it.
Again, remember, the Bab wouldn't go on pilgrimage until 361 people had believed. So when Mullah Hussein sends this letter contains the fact that His Holiness Baha'u'llah is on board. That's when the Bab's like, okay, now I can go on pilgrimage. It's at that point where the Bab's happy and things are set.
Conditions have been met.
Usual way of phrasing that, but okay, fine. Thanks.
Chapter 7, the Bab's pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina. The letter of Mullah Hussein decided the Bab to undertake his contemplated pilgrimage to Hijaz, entrusting his wife to his mother and committing them both to the care and protection of his maternal uncle. He joined the company of the pilgrims of Fars, who were preparing to leave Shiraz for Mecca and Medina. Qudus was his only companion and the Ethiopian servant, his personal attendant. He first proceeded to Bushir, the seat of his uncle's business, where in the former days he, in close association with him, had lived the life of a humble merchant. Having there completed the preliminary arrangements for his long and arduous voyage, he embarked on a sailing vessel, which, after 2 months of slow, stormy, and unsteady sailing, landed him upon the shores of that sacred land. High seas and the complete absence of comfort could neither interfere with the regularity of his devotions, nor perturb the peacefulness of his meditations and prayers. Oblivious of the storm that raged about him, and undeterred by the sickness which had seized his fellow pilgrims, he continued to occupy his time in dictating to Qudus such prayers and epistles as he felt inspired to reveal. I have heard Haji Abul Hassani Shirazi, who was traveling in the same vessel as the Bab, describe the circumstances of that remarkable voyage. During the entire period of approximately 2 months, he asserted, from the day we embarked at Bushir to the day when we landed at Jeddah, the port of Hijaz, whenever by day or night I chanced to meet either the Bab or Qudus, I invariably found them together, both absorbed in their work. The Bab seemed to be dictating, and Qudus was busily engaged in taking down whatever fell from his lips. Even at a time when panic seemed to have seized the passengers of that storm-tossed vessel, they would be seen pursuing their labors with unperturbed confidence and calm. Neither the violence of the elements nor the tumult of the people around them could either ruffle the serenity of their countenance or turn them from their purpose. The Bab himself in the Persian Bayan refers to the hardships of that voyage. For days, he wrote, we suffered from the scarcity of water. I had to content myself with the juice of the sweet lemon. Because of this experience, he supplicated the Almighty to grant that the means of ocean travel might soon be speedily improved, that its hardships might be reduced, and its perils be entirely eliminated. Within a short space of time since that prayer was offered, the evidences of a remarkable improvement in all forms of maritime transport have greatly multiplied, and the Persian Gulf, which in those days hardly possessed a single steam-driven vessel, now boasts a fleet of ocean liners that can, within the range of a few days, and in the utmost comfort, carry the people of Fars on their annual pilgrimage to Hijaz. The peoples of the West, among whom the first evidences of this great industrial revolution have appeared, are, alas, as yet wholly unaware of the source whence this mighty stream, this great motive power proceeds, a force that has revolutionized every aspect of their material life. Their own history testifies to the fact that in the year which witnessed the dawn of this glorious revelation, there suddenly appeared evidences of an industrial and economic revolution that the people themselves declare to have been unprecedented in the history of mankind. In their concern for the details of the working and adjustments of this newly conceived machinery, they have gradually lost sight of the source and object of this tremendous power which the Almighty has committed to their charge. They seem to have sorely misused this power and misunderstood its function. Designed to confer upon the people of the West the blessings of peace and of happiness, it has been utilized by them to promote the interests of destruction and war. Upon his arrival in Jeddah, the Bab donned the pilgrim's garb, mounted a camel, and set out on his journey to Mecca. Qudus, however, notwithstanding the repeatedly expressed desire of his master, preferred to accompany him on foot all the way from Jeddah to that holy city. Holding in his hand the bridle of the camel upon which the Bab was riding, he walked along joyously and prayerfully, ministering to his master's needs, wholly indifferent to the fatigues of his arduous march. Every night, from eventide until the break of day, Qudus, sacrificing comfort and sleep, would continue with unrelaxing vigilance to watch beside his beloved, ready to provide for his wants and to ensure the means of his protection and safety. One day, when the Bab had dismounted close to a well in order to offer his morning prayer, a roving Bedouin suddenly appeared on the horizon, drew near to him, and snatching the saddlebag that had been lying on the ground beside him, and which contained his writings and papers, vanished into the unknown desert. His Ethiopian servant set out to pursue him, but was prevented by his master, who, as he was praying, motioned to him with his hand to give up his pursuit. Had I allowed you, the Bab later on affectionately assured him, you would surely have overtaken and punished him. But this was not to be. The papers and writings which that bag contained are destined to reach, through the instrumentality of this Arab, such places as we could never have succeeded in attaining. Grieve not, therefore, at his action, for this was decreed by God, the Ordainer, the Almighty. Many a time afterwards did the Bab on similar occasions seek to comfort his friends by such reflections. By words such as these, he turned the bitterness of regret and of resentment into radiant acquiescence in the divine purpose and into joyous submission to God's will. On the day of Arafat, the Bab, seeking the quiet seclusion of his cell, devoted his whole time to meditation and worship. On the following day, the day of Nahr, after he had offered the feast day prayer, he proceeded to Mullah, where according to ancient custom, he purchased 19 lambs of the choicest breed, of which he sacrificed 9 in his own name, 7 in the name of Qadus, and 3 in the name of his Ethiopian servant. He refused to partake of the meat of this consecrated sacrifice, preferring instead to distribute it freely among the poor and needy of that neighborhood. Although the month of Zil-Hijjah, the month of pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina, coincided in that year with the first month of the winter season, yet so intense was the heat in that region that the pilgrims who made the circuit of the sacred shrine were unable to perform that rite in their usual garments. Draped in a light, loose-fitting tunic, they joined in the celebration of the festival. The Bab, however, refused, as a mark of deference, to discard either his turban or cloak. Dressed in his usual attire, he, with the utmost dignity and calm, and with extreme simplicity and reverence, compassed the Kaaba and performed all of the prescribed rites of worship. On the last day of his pilgrimage to Mecca, the Bab met Mirza Mohit Kermani. He stood facing the black stone when the Bab approached him, and taking his hand in his, addressed him in these words: "O Mohit, you regard yourself as one of the most outstanding figures of the Shaikhi community and a distinguished exponent of its teachings. In your heart, you even claim to be one of the direct successors and rightful inheritors of those twin great lights, those stars that have heralded the morn of divine guidance. Behold, we are both now standing within this most sacred shrine. Within its hallowed precincts, he whose spirit dwells in this place can cause truth immediately to be known and distinguished from falsehood, and righteousness from error. Verily, I declare, none besides me in this day, whether in the east or in the west, can claim to be the gate that leads men to the knowledge of God. My proof is none other than that proof whereby the truth of the Prophet Muhammad was established. Ask me whatsoever you please. Now, at this very moment, I pledge myself to reveal such verses as can demonstrate the truth of my mission. You must choose either to submit yourself unreservedly to my cause or to repudiate it entirely. You have no other alternative. If you choose to reject my message, I will not let go your hand until you pledge your word to declare publicly your repudiation of the truth which I have proclaimed. Thus shall he who speaks the truth be made known, and he that speaks falsely shall be condemned to eternal misery and shame. Then shall the way of truth be revealed and made manifest to all men."
His Holiness the Bab has undertaken his pilgrimage to Hijaz, to Mecca and Medina. Now he leaves the port of Bandar Bushehr up here. He goes on his boat. He actually stops in Muscat, although the Dawnbreakers doesn't mention this. It's rumored that he also stops in Yemen. Apparently, when he stops in Yemen, he stays there for maybe a day. Apparently, there's a bunch of Babis that have been found in Yemen about 6 years ago who became Babis when the Bab stopped there and hadn't heard of the Baha'i faith until recently. I don't know whether this story's been substantiated or not. I'm hearing different stories. But anyway, not to confuse with that. As they're going on their journey, the conditions were horrendous, absolutely horrendous. And this is where one of the footnotes that I'd highlighted in is where the Bab says that any deed done on water is worth twice that done on land. So again, if you're going to do anything nice for anyone, make sure you've got a little pot, you stand in the pot, do the deed, and then you're good. It means you have to be half as good your whole life. Now, why does he say any deed done on water is worth twice that done on land? He's making reference to the fact that the journey was so hard and it's so difficult to be kind. Imagine when you wake up and you're groggy and you're just like, ugh, in a horrible mood, and to be kind to people. I mean, for me, it's fine. I do it all the time. But some people are a bit snappy, or if they're hangry, or maybe it sounds familiar to some of you. I don't know. Either way, the Bab is saying that when you're doing things, good things in difficult conditions, it's worth twice. He makes the point. The Bab then realizes that this journey is so bad, and the Bab prays. He says a prayer for ocean travel to become a lot quicker. And because of this prayer, it's understood that this is actually what's sort of like all these reverberating forces that really quickens technology and industry. And the Dawnbreakers goes on to say that people don't realize where the source of this brilliance has come from. So the Guardian saying that it's actually the prayer of the Bab that allowed this sudden expansion in technological advances to happen. And then he goes on to say, but unfortunately, we're using it for war. What are we using it for? The Bab then arrives in Jeddah. While he's in Jeddah at the port here, he sits down by a well. He's about to say a prayer. And then a Bedouin comes along and he starts running along. He doesn't realize he's stealing from the Bab. It just blows, of all the people to steal from. Like, that's kind of ridiculous to be the guy who stole from the Bab. In the next world, you may see him. Yeah, he might have this satchel with him. But he snatches this satchel and he starts to run. The Bab's in prayer and the Ethiopian servant sees and he's like, right, I'm getting after him. Being a brilliant runner, starts to run after him. And the Bab says, wait, let him go, let him go. And the Ethiopian servant's a little bit confused. He's like, but the bag, the satchel. The Bab's like, it's fine. And the Bab says, there are writings in there and who knows where they're going to spread to, places that we can't visit them. Such a beautiful way of seeing things. This is like being super positive. I remember when my motorbike got stolen, I wasn't thinking, great, some other kids can now enjoy the speed that a motorbike brings. I was a little bit annoyed. But then again, I'm not a manifestation of God. The point is, he's looking at this in such a beautiful way that actually when the will of God, when you're trying to do the will of God, I guess, even if things don't happen the way you perceive them, maybe there's a reason behind it. After this, we know they're arriving in the area. It's on the day of Arafat, and the day after, the day of Nahr, is where you typically sacrifice these lambs. So the Bab has this big feast, and you wouldn't just sacrifice them and leave them to die. You'd obviously feed people with them. So this happens. Then we get to the Black Stone. We're coming up to the Black Stone, and we see Mirza Muhammad, or Mirza Mohit, as he's known back in the day. And Mirza Mohit is this tall, lean, thin person who's one of the people that Sayyid Kazim actually mentioned would try and, essentially in veiled language, would try and claim leadership of the Shaykhis and make claim to be something. And he's one of these three characters. When Sayyid Kazim says the Bab will be of medium height, he knows full well that this guy, Mirza Mohit, is going to try and claim to be the guy, and he's going to claim to take leadership of some sort. Anyway, the Bab sees him, and the Bab wasn't super tall, I've got to say. They're facing the Kaaba, they're facing the Black Stone, and this is where the Bab holds his hand, and he says, Mirza Mohit, it seems that you don't believe. Why don't you believe? Any question you have, I'm going to answer. And I want you to publicly denounce me and say that you don't believe me or believe in me. I'm not going to let go of your hand until then.
This peremptory challenge, thrust so unexpectedly by the Bab upon Mirza Mohit Kermani, profoundly distressed him. He was so overpowered by its directness, its compelling majesty and force. In the presence of that youth, he, notwithstanding his age, his authority and learning, felt as a helpless bird prisoned in the grasp of a mighty eagle. Confused and full of fear, he replied, "My lord, my master, ever since the day on which my eyes beheld you in Karbala, I seemed at last to have found and recognized him who had been the object of my quests. I renounce whosoever has failed to recognize you and despise him in whose heart may yet linger the faintest misgivings as to your purity and holiness. I pray you to overlook my weakness and entreat you to answer me in my perplexity. Please God, I may at this very place within the precincts of this hallowed shrine swear my fealty to you and arise for the triumph of your cause. If I be insincere in what I declare, if in my heart I should disbelieve in what my lips proclaim, I would deem myself utterly unworthy of the grace of the Prophet of God and regard my action as an act of manifest disloyalty to Ali, his chosen successor." The Bab, who listened attentively to his words and who was well aware of his helplessness and poverty of soul, answered and said, "Verily I say, the truth is even now known and distinguished from falsehood. O shrine of the Prophet of God, and you, O Quddus, who have believed in me, I take you both in this hour as my witness. You have seen and heard that which has come to pass between me and him. I call upon you to testify thereunto, and God verily is beyond and above you, my sure and ultimate witness. He is the all-seeing, the all-knowing, the all-wise. O Mohit, set forth whatsoever perplexes your mind, and I will, by the aid of God, unloose my tongue and undertake to resolve your problems, so that you may testify to the excellence of my utterance and realize that no one besides me is able to manifest my wisdom. Mirza Mohed responded to the invitation of the Bab and submitted to him his questions. Pleading to the necessity of his immediate departure from Medina, he expressed the hope of receiving, ere his departure from that city, the text of the promised reply. I will grant your request, the Bab assured him. On my way to Medina, I shall, with the assistance of God, reveal my answer to your questions. If I meet you not in that city, my reply will surely reach you immediately after your arrival at Karbala. Whatever justice and fairness may dictate, the same shall I expect you to fulfill. If ye do well, to your own behoof will ye do well, and if ye do evil against yourself, will ye do it. God is verily independent of all his creatures. Mirza Mohed, ere his departure, again expressed his firm resolve to redeem his solemn pledge. I shall never depart from Medina, he assured the Bab, whatever may betide, until I have fulfilled my covenant with you. As the mote which is driven before the gale, he, unable to withstand the sweeping majesty of the revelation proclaimed by the Bab, fled in terror from before his face. He tarried away in Medina, and faithless to his pledge and disregardful of the admonitions of his conscience, left for Karbala. The Bab, faithful to his promise, revealed on his way from Mecca to Medina his written reply to the questions that had perplexed the mind of Mirza Mohed, and gave it the name of the
Safaya Bain al-Haramain.
Mirza Mohed, who received it in the early days of his arrival in Karbala, remained unmoved by its tone and refused to recognize the precepts which it inculcated. His attitude towards the faith was one of concealed and persistent opposition. At times, he professed to be a follower and supporter of that notorious adversary of the Bab, Mirza Karim Khan, and occasionally claimed for himself the station of an independent leader. Nearing the end of his days, whilst residing in Iraq, he, feigning submission to Baha'u'llah, expressed through one of the Persian princes who dwelt in Baghdad a desire to meet him. He requested that his proposed interview be regarded as strictly confidential. Tell him, was Baha'u'llah's reply, that in the days of my retirement in the mountains of Sulaymaniyeh, I, in a certain ode which I composed, set forth the essential requirements from every wayfarer who treads the path of search in his quest of truth. Share with him this verse from that ode. If thine aim be to cherish thy life, approach not our court. But if sacrifice be thy heart's desire, come and let others come with thee. For such is the way of faith. If in thy heart thou seekest reunion with Baha, shouldst thou refuse to tread this path, why trouble us? Be gone. If he be willing, he will openly and unreservedly hasten to meet me. If not, I refuse to see him. Baha'u'llah's unequivocal answer disconcerted Mirza Mohed. Unable to resist and unwilling to comply, he departed for his home in Karbala the very day he received that message. As soon as he arrived, he sickened, and 3 days later, he died.
Thank you very much. So a quick recap of what's happened here. The Bab is holding Mirza Mohed's hand. He says, you either believe or you denounce me right here and right now. Mirza Mohed says, oh, believe me, I promise you, I really want to believe in you, but there's just a few things that perplex my mind. The Bab says, no problem. Let me know what it is and I will write to you. Mirza Mohit says, yes, absolutely. I would love nothing more than this. I promise you. And he's like, look, I need to go to Medina. And the Bab says, right, I will write to you. And Mirza Mohit says, I promise you I will wait in Medina because I'm that sort of guy. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm definitely going to do it. I will be in Medina. The Bab says, if you're not in Medina by any chance, I will write this letter and I will send it to you in Karbala. Sure enough, Mirza Mohit was in fear and he left Medina. He was terrified at potentially accepting what the Bab had said. And he went from Medina all the way up to Karbala. The Bab then forwards his message and writes to him. It had no effect on Mirza Mohit whatsoever. Mirza Mohit at one point goes and becomes a supporter of Haji Mirza Karim Khan, who's one of the antichrists of the Babi revelation. He's the one-eyed guy. At another time, he professed to be the head of the whole thing himself. So really, Mirza Mohit is someone who's just not to be trusted. He's too scared of facing the truth. Later, basically loses all his power. And he says to Baha'u'llah, can I have a conversation with you in private to talk about the truth? And Baha'u'llah says, look, when I was in the mountains of Soleimaniye, I wrote this ode, and in this ode it basically says, and I'm paraphrasing here, if you want to know the truth, if you're willing to sacrifice yourselves, come towards us. But if you cherish your life and you're not willing to do this, don't bother doing this. So Mirza Mohit, what's it to be? If you really want to come and understand and investigate, are you willing to give up your life? If so, come and meet me in public. Mirza Mohit, absolutely terrified, declines to do this. We then know that Mirza Mohit sickens, and 3 days later, he dies. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for joining me tonight. We will continue this story, this beautiful story, but we're going to end with a prayer. So if there's someone who'd like to kick us off with a praying, that'd be very much appreciated.
My God, whom I worship and adore, I bear witness unto thy unity and thy oneness, and acknowledge thy gifts, both in the past and in the present. Thou art the all-bountiful, the overflowing showers of whose mercy have rained down upon high and low alike, and the splendors of whose grace have been shed over both the obedient and the rebellious. O God of mercy, before whose door the quintessence of mercy hath bowed down, and round the sanctuary of whose cause loving kindness in its inmost spirit hath circled, we beseech thee, entreating thine ancient grace, and seeking thy present favour, that thou mayest have mercy upon all who are the manifestations of the world of being, and deny them not the outpourings of thy grace in thy days. All are but poor and needy, and thou verily art the all-possessing, the all-subduing, the all-powerful. Baha'u'llah.